You're listening to the Perth Property Show, Australia's only weekly property podcast by West Australian experts for West Australian listeners. Catch your latest episode every Monday at 7 a.m.
Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Perth Property Show. My name's Trent Fleskens, your host. As always, this week we're doing another suburb spotlight, but we're going into the apartment space. And we're crossing the city after speaking to one of our great contributors, Richard Self, around West Perth a few weeks ago. We're now speaking to his equivalent on the other side of Perth, the king of East Perth. It's Brendon Habak from Inhabit. How you going, mate?
Good, mate. Thanks for having us.
It's an opportune time to have a conversation again about apartments in a different part of our city, especially after all the noise that's been going on with regards to negative gearing and tax. Conversations around does it affect apartments, new builds, all those things as well. Have you had any different inquiry levels? I wanted to get a bit of a temperature check on the other side of William Street, really, and have a bit of a chat about East Perth specifically as well. Tell me about East Perth. If I didn't spend my time at Trinity College as a student and I was thinking maybe of sending my kids there, that'd probably be a good one, or maybe obviously more specifically living there, how would you sell your suburb?
It was interesting because I grew up in New South Wales, so I didn't know East Perth at all. And I remember when I got my first job, LJ Hooker in Royal Street, my boss at the time took me for a drive, turned into that Claysbrook Cove area, and I thought I was in Europe. I loved it. Like, to me, it was heaven. And then when I started working in East Perth, I realised it's got all the natural landscape, everything you could possibly want. It was just missing a bit of infrastructure. And the last 18 years or so, that started to build up. And then today you look at it and you've got the new swimming pool area, you've got the water slides, which is awesome. No need to go to Outback Splash. It's so good. In terms of apartments and amenity, like we're finally getting that cafe culture that we've been waiting for. I mean, still missing a fish and chip store, still missing like an ice cream parlor, but that stuff will probably come with a bit more apartment growth. But more than that as well, if I was thinking East Perth, it's just like living in one of the best sort of seaside or riverside suburbs in Melbourne or Sydney, just without the price tag. So to me, phenomenal.
When you think about ice cream parlour, the local butcher, where would those things go? Because it's probably the one criticism that we have of East Perth is that it has all this beautiful natural amenity. The river wraps around it. You've got this Claysbrook Cove, which is like the French Riviera, as you spoke to. You've got a great school, a new school being built, Queen's Gardens. There's some real beauty about East Perth, but one thing it lacks is a town centre, a real town centre like Beaufort Street, like Claremont, Vic Park, Mount Lawley, North Perth, right? Where would that go if you could put it there? And what's it going to take to really bring in that township feel?
Yeah, Royal Street is nice, but Royal Street doesn't have a connection and a buzz. I reckon it's Wellington Street where the Perth Girls School redevelopment will be. I think that plan to have those three tall towers with the retail shopping at the bottom and the big grocery store with the free parking, that kind of a plan would work. It's the bridge between Terrace Road, Adelaide Terrace, Wellington Square, the upcoming primary school, and then you've got Royal Street, which has always been like a real lovely place to live, not a very good place to shop. So I think it's going to be Wellington, just that pocket there where they're building the new school and the old WACA car park. If you were to take that spot through to Wellington Square, where the big park is, right through there has got to be that central.
Maybe make it a bit of a promenade, get some cobblestone instead of the cars just driving straight through, slow the traffic down.
Oh, mate, I've almost been ran over plenty of times trying to put home open signs out on Wellington Street. If that was less of a car thoroughfare and a bus thoroughfare and more of a walkable place with shops kind of on the end and park at the other side, brilliant.
Yeah, I think you're spot on there. There's a lot of heritage with that girls' school and it's just so underutilised. The car park as well, there's a lot of space there where if the right infrastructure was put in, beautiful views as well, there could be some great opportunities. So look, it's a medium-term thought, but you're starting with the great foundation of what is the beauty of the Swan River wrapping around you in the first place. What would be the median product, the everyday product you could capture in one apartment? What does it look like for you, that one you've sold so many times before?
Yeah, that kind of 2-bed, 2-bath, 1-car, modern type building, perhaps with a gym in it. Probably not a swimming pool because someone who's a really big swimmer is going to want to go down to the WACA swimming pool. But like the type of property that I sold in 2018 prior to COVID for $480,000, today we're looking closer to 700. But that kind of a product, that kind of a lifestyle is ideal. You still can walk to the city for work. You can still get out of there on the freeway to get to the western suburbs or to get to the beach. That type of lifestyle is really mimicking a little bit of what I was used to back in Sydney. So Pyrmont area, Glebe area, where you're very close to the city but kind of far enough away to get away, if that makes sense. And if you want to go the entertainment route, you're crossing the Matagarup and you're over in Burswood. So you still got that walkability factor to get to the footy.
$700,000 is a price that people would have scoffed at a few years ago, but when you think about the price of units, townhouses these days across Perth, it's one of the more affordable products. It's finally seen some growth, as you've just signposted then, after years
Absolutely.
of people being in negative equity or just not seeing a lot going on. Is it still an upward trajectory month by month, week by week in East Perth? Has it calmed down recently? What's been that dynamic on the ground between seller expectations and buyer FOMO?
Positive, albeit a lot slower than it was in the last 12 months. One thing we know about 2026 is that there's been surprises. And the big surprise was we're all banking on another 8 to 12% growth for apartments. I can't really see that happening post-federal budget talks. My thoughts are still positive. We've still got some growth going. If you looked at the equivalent property in the Gold Coast or the equivalent property in Sydney, it would be almost double the price. So we still have that fat in there to grow. And if we think about the cost for a mortgage versus the income ratio, we're still a lot cheaper than the East Coast comparables.
What about rents? I think a lot of people were comparing rents, mortgages when they think about apartment living, especially young people. What does that look like?
I've got a property in Erskineville in the inner city suburbs of Sydney. It's probably not as central as East Perth would be to the city, but it's very close. And I've got that property. It might be worth $1 million and it's getting $950 a week rent. That $700,000 two-bedroom apartment that I'm describing in Wellington Street, that property there would probably be getting $800 a week rent. So if you look at that ratio, $700 buy price, $800 per week rental, it's much better than $1 million buy price and $950.
Yeah, so the yield's certainly higher. And I guess that decision just has to be made for that buyer as to, do I rent for $800 or do I buy for a mortgage with interest rates currently where they are for what is probably a $600,000 mortgage at that price point, if they're lucky and they've saved pretty well. And I guess that's probably one of the bigger decisions you're always coming up against when you're speaking to your buyers is, do they just become one of your rental tenants or do they become one of your buyers? When you're selling that 2x2 at the moment, are you getting multiple offers still? Are you getting 10, 15, 30 people through at a home open, or is it more or less?
God, I wish. It's not that anymore. We had that for a little while there. We were having 20s through a 30-minute home open, so 20 people through, writing 3 or 4 offers, going 5% over asking price. That was brilliant this time last year. Today, prices are still a little bit higher than they were this time last year, but we're getting 5 people through, potentially 1 offer. And it's kind of showing me that sellers may be still living in that, well, it's still going to grow really fast, part of their thinking. Our job is to make sure that they're not pitching it way too high. So the buyers come in and say, well, hold on, last year when the interest rates were a little bit cheaper, the pre-approval that I had could have got me $700,000 pretty easily. But today it's only going to get me $660,000. You know, at $660,000, that's going to bring the market down.
But at the same time, seller expectations are now $730,000.
Yeah, absolutely. And you think, well, if you're not going to take that offer at $660,000, where's it going to head to next? Probably come off the market. And it won't be on the market anymore. Yeah, and just wait it out
next
again.
year.
Yeah.
In the meantime, obviously, rent's still fairly strong at space, and the rental market is decoupled from that reality. And my understanding is that it's still pretty tight in the rental space, especially for this type of product. What would the percentage be? 50%? 60%?
It's a tough one because when I think about every single property, but most properties that have been sold in the last 3 years since the increases started, 90% of them would be going to owner-occupiers.
Yeah, there you go. So that's interesting. We're talking about a part of the market there, investors who have that option to rent out. Also, owner-occupiers who have lived there looking to move on to the next level, maybe a townhouse down the road or in Vic Park or something. They could become landlords and get a good rental yield and hold that and still benefit from grandfathered negative gearing. So there's a conversation to be had there, I'm sure, from your side. But I guess it is a conversation that is probably the first one I'm having with an agent where you're speaking quite candidly to softening in your sector of the market.
With the apartments and townhouses, so let's call strata. So if I look at strata, the other side of the coin is, do I hold on to this property hoping for an increase? Because let's think about what's being built. If you went to buy an equivalent 2-bedroom apartment in East Perth that's currently being built, you're going to be spending probably 25% higher on buying brand new.
Are you talking about the Finbar product?
Yeah, so if you're going for a 2-bedroom there, the cheapest you'd be able to probably grab would be $900,000. And that'd be a lower level property with not much of an outlook. Whereas if you're spending $750 for a residential, something that's reselling on Adelaide Terrace, you're probably getting a pretty good Swan River view. So you got to look at it from that side and say, do you buy secondhand or do you go for a government incentive to go to buy brand new as an investor?
What we know pretty clearly is that it's not a supply thing. You don't have massive amounts of supply coming on the market, do you? You don't have heaps of people selling. You don't have brand new apartment buildings coming up. All there really has been was the Queen's Garden development from Finbar. That's really all we're talking about with new supply.
Quite right.
So it's a demand thing. So what you're saying is the amount of people selling is pretty similar to what it was a year ago. There are just less people walking through the door. Why specifically is that? Is it affordability because prices have risen? Is it serviceability because interest rates? Or there's just less people who want to buy apartments in East Perth? Can you give me a pie graph on that?
A lot of the people who wanted to buy have already done so. So now they're looking at it saying, well, do I really want to buy or do I want to just be a renter like we were mentioning earlier? And the other side of it is the strata costs. It's not like that's becoming any cheaper. So with cost of living going up, I might come into the city and buy so I can cut down on travel time. But then if I look at the strata fees, the average, let's say $700,000 two-bedroom apartment, our strata fees are now coming in at $2,500 a quarter. That's without reserves, that's without special levies. I'm selling one at the moment, which is $5,100. It's asking $900,000. That's on Adelaide Terrace. To me, it's a bit of a no-brainer why people walk in and walk out sometimes. So if you had to look at it from a demand perspective, you probably then re-look at living 10 minutes away from the city or 15 minutes away from the city via train and buying a small 2x2 townhouse or a villa, maybe something a few years old that you refurbish and get a little bit of land component. You live a little bit cheaper. Sure, you're not right in the middle of the city, but you still have a very nice cafe strip lifestyle.
Is that what East Perth has suffered from forever? Is that the alternative is a great lifestyle in Vic Park on some land?
Yeah, so the East Perth, if you think back to turn of the millennium, when they subdivided and built all those lovely homes by the Riviera, if we're going to call it that, the people who bought those were not the wealthiest people in the world. They're very middle class, so the homes were built nicely on the outside. Internally, pretty average. And has times really changed? Probably not. A lot of people have bought those homes from me and refurbished them, and they've probably been refurbished again. But the value that they put into it and the prices have risen, probably not in the same ratio, to be fair. So if you look at it as like you're trying to sell East Perth on its merits, which is awesome location, fantastic natural landscape, great shopping, great IGA, but there's nothing really that's saying, well, this is the primo area because the stock doesn't really lend itself that way. So if you're building apartments, you kind of have to build middle grade. You're not building upper level stuff.
Yeah, because you're just going to overcapitalise your market.
Yeah, it's not the same as building in Cottesloe, even Subi. Yeah, and Subi's fantastic.
Does that mean that East Perth will always be sentenced to being investor grade, first home buyer grade, middle class grade, because it simply just hasn't been able to build a reputation for an upper class lifestyle, even though it has all these beautiful natural amenities?
Well, until the guys like me who came from the East Coast 20 years ago come to Perth and they decide that East Perth really is the place to be. Because if you were to go to the same thing over in the East Coast, it'd be double or triple the price. But it'll also be at a higher level of living. So East Perth, yeah, it'll probably continue to be like that for the locals. You might still want to live in Dalkeith rather than buying in East Perth. But again, if you were going to buy an apartment, you might then choose Claremont or you might choose Subi over East Perth with the price tag associated with it. So the same product might be worth 30 to 35% more in Subiaco than it is in East Perth. But between you and I love East Perth. My townhouse that my wife and I own is on Kensington Street. Lovely place to live. I miss it almost every day because we were able to walk out and go enjoy the river. I go down and shoot some hoops down at Mardelup where the penthouse owner wanted $25 million. We showed a client through there the other day. Whether it's worth $25 million or not, it still was classed as the most expensive penthouse in Australia for a short period of time.
Yeah.
But it's amazing because I do miss East Perth every day because of those factors. But again, if I had to go and spend $2 million on a townhouse, I probably wouldn't look in East Perth. I might look elsewhere. And if I was going to spend $4 million on a property, again, I'd probably look Western Suburbs or South Perth.
So therefore, what you're saying is East Perth is definitely the sort of home for a first home buyer, for a young person with maybe a small family, for someone who isn't looking to blow the lights out when it comes to price points and wants value for money. Value hunters is what you're talking about.
And the downsizers. So the downsizers who say, I want to live in a good place, central. I want to be able to lock it up and enjoy myself. So head off for travel, go and spend time Margaret River and places like that. Maybe it's a second home. It's a place in the city. That happens quite often. Thinking back to one of my recent sales of a townhouse in East Perth just 2 months ago, lovely lady currently living in East Perth in an apartment with a beautiful view. So instead of buying an apartment in the complex that she's currently in with a sensational view but high strata fees, she's gone and bought a $1.6 million townhouse from us in a great street, somewhere where she can literally lock up and leave because she spends a lot of time in Dubai.
You don't just sell in East Perth. You've got a pretty prolific space in Perth itself. Is the dynamics there any different?
The Perth apartment space, because there isn't many houses in Perth, unless you're in the Burswood Street kind of region, but the apartments in Perth itself are at a different level. So Elizabeth Quay, if we're talking about the Ritz-Carlton, just signed on the dotted line for one that we sold in there today. A 2-bedroom apartment, 1.4 to 1.5 mil. So 1.4 to 1.5 mil in a really world-class location. Not everyone loves the design of the apartments. They're kind of in a semicircle.
Yep.
So your balcony's a bit of an odd kind of setup. It's a more of
bit of an ice cream cone setup.
Yeah, pretty much. But when you go in there, you almost feel like you're in Singapore for a moment. It's the Ritz-Carlton. But you walk out and you're into the Quay. And in the Quay, for a second there, you could be confused. You literally could be on the water in somewhere in Asia, just for a split second. But then if you go to the next equivalent ones in the middle of the city, you've got some really nice 3-bedroom, 2-bedroom products, but they're $1 million plus now.
So there's a big difference between Perth prices and East Perth prices for similar product?
Well, I'd say that the Perth product has been pitched a little better.
Okay.
Yeah, most of it.
Less tired?
Yeah, a little bit like that, except for Terrace Road, because Terrace Road has been a really nice little golden triangle spot. South Perth Esplanade, Terrace Road, and then you've got Kings Park. But if you look at it now, you've now got Elizabeth Quay as well. So if you talk about those 4 vantage points, the most affordable and potentially the quieter, but the more affordable spot is Terrace Road. And Terrace Road's lovely, but still a little bit disconnected from amenity. Getting better, because now you have the IGA inside FMG, or the old FMG building.
Yep.
That has helped, and you've got a gym on Terrace Road. But again, if I looked a little further across, South Perth. How lovely is the South Perth Peninsula?
Yeah, it's fantastic. You do a little bit of selling in Wembley Jolimont space as well. Is there a noticeable difference in the negotiation home open dynamics there versus East Perth, or is it quite similar for you?
Very different. So a property that I just sold, settled last week actually. It was a beautiful home in Wembley, 2 streets away from where I used to live. So we've recently moved. Still own our home in Wembley because the ground is gold there.
Yeah, they don't make any more of it, that's for sure.
Absolutely. Love Wembley. Miss it as well as East Perth. But in Wembley, this home, we had 42 people through our first home open, which was about 8 weeks ago. 42 people through, 6 offers written. I thought it was worth $3 million plus. We ended up getting a few offers, anywhere between $2,600,000 and $2.85. We ended up selling it for $2.85. It was subject to finance, and then the buyers had some bad news, and the bank said, sorry, we can't lend to you this much money, you have to sell something. So about the 3rd week of their finance period, asked us for an extension because now they have to sell something. Talked to the owner. The owner said, let's give them a week extension and see what happens. We did that week. It didn't come good. Obviously, they have to sell the home. You got to prepare it. You got to get it ready. You got to find an agent, all those kinds of things. It wasn't in our area, so it's not the kind of property I could have swung into and helped with. We gave them an extra week. It wasn't going anywhere. We ended up deciding to put it back on the market. And when we put it back on the market, this time around, we only had 11 people through the home open, but about 7 or 8 of those people were the people who came through the first home open. And we wrote 3 offers, 2 of them from the first home open. 1 was a new buyer. We ended up selling it for 3.1. So isn't it amazing? That's
very interesting, and it speaks, again, to some of the feedback we've gotten over the last couple of months in that the buyer pool seems to be getting a bit smaller as prices go up. It's just less accessible for the people who want to be in that suburb right now because it doesn't seem to have calibrated yet. People are still stumping up when they have to get good product.
Yes, and we put it to the man. We said, look, there's another offer which is very similar to yours. Of course, we weren't going to play hacky sack or do any Dutch auctions. And what we did say was, let's put your best foot forward. Do you want to miss it a second time? And he said, no, I'm happy to put this price on. So he increased his offer, got it accepted that day. Very pleased.
I can imagine. And did you have some underbidders that were pretty close to that?
There's 2 offers very close. And the other one was a little behind, but still better than the last price that we had accepted.
There you go. Does it confuse you given all the noise and the fact that noise generally creates stasis? this is probably the scariest time to be bringing a property back to market again. You'd nearly have to be conditioning your seller to go, hey, look, with everything that's going on, this 2.85 could end up being 2.7 or 2.6, just given the noise right now. If you have to sell this month, worst time you could be probably trying to sell in the last 2 years. So what do you put it down to? Is it just what I was sort of speaking to before, or is there any other secret sauce that's gotten them an extra 10%?
Well, I never shake. The truth of it is that if it's falling through, it's probably because it was supposed to. And my original appraisal on that was it's got to be $3 million.
Why didn't you get it last time?
Yeah, in knowing that my home, which is on a smaller block, it's probably arguably as good or if not better home, but we had it valued by a bank at about 3. So I thought to myself, this one should be at least $3 million. When we went through the first time, there was a bit of media talk. There was a little bit of the US-Iran stuff showing its surface. There was also a lot of people saying, well, this street is not as good as some of the other streets in Wembley. And all that noise was happening and people fed into that. And I thought to myself, no, there's probably just a few too many properties available at this point in time. So second time round, there was less properties available. A lot of people were holding back, waiting to see what would happen with federal budgets and the US-Iran situation. Interest rates also went up. That $3.1 million offer, that was cash and clear.
Yeah. And there you go. So the interest rates side of things was an irrelevancy. And one thing, again, that we've had spoken to on this podcast recently is how much of a difference week to week between what's available that weekend.
Yeah.
If you had 3 or 4 other properties available that weekend, thinning the herd, obviously you're just quartering the amount of people who might be interested in putting that top offer in. You go the next week and there's a little bit of luck, no one's put their property on the market this week. You're the one option. It sort of creates this, and both sides of the coin really, it artificially augments the feeling of scarcity in your area.
And week to week, it feels very different. So if I had to go back in time and think about that Wembley property, if we had launched it the week later, would we have still got the 2.85 or would we have got the 3.1 the first time round? Not really sure.
It's hard to know though, because you're then playing a game of chicken with the other agents as to, are you going to go this week? And it's not like you're calling competitors in the area and saying, hey, I'll sell this week, you sell next week. That's not happening either.
No, not at all.
So sometimes you just get lucky and sometimes you get unlucky and sometimes you get exactly what you thought you were going to get.
Yeah.
But, 3.1 when you thought it was 3 sounds like most of your experiences over the last couple of years in everywhere other than what you're saying is East Perth's experience right now. Does it make you nervous about the broader market, your experience in East Perth, or do you think that is a fairly unique setting across the Perth space?
So East Perth in general, as a suburb to sell, I think East Perth has got a lot of positives, but probably missing some spark. It's just missing something. I'd say maybe it's community. So if I live in Nedlands, there's a Nedlands community at the local school. There's a Nedlands community at the local bowling.
Whether you like it or not.
They don't have a bowling, but they've got the golf course and they've got the local shops and all those kinds of things. So you get to know your locals and you become a community. In East Perth, it's pretty transient. But also people who know and love East Perth, they probably don't know and love their neighbours. So the community aspect's missing. It almost feels like there's a spark that hasn't been lit yet. And in a positive way, I don't want anyone to burn any homes. But what I'm saying is that if you have that school, that could be it.
I mean, Trinity is a school, but it's a school for the whole of Perth. It's not a local school. Yeah. And
then if you went to the WACA, I took my kids there not long ago, and here I was up and down the slides. And I thought to myself, there's some locals, some of my clients who I'd sold to and sold for. And I thought, here we go. Here's that community aspect.
And there'll be plenty who still haven't even thought to go there yet.
Yeah.
And that will build a bit of groundswell too. I think you're spot on. Community drives somewhat from character, and that spark is what the only thing that's missing in East Perth. And it leads me to think, East Perth was probably the last suburb to start to get a rise in terms of feeling the effects of growth from demand supply in Perth. I guess I'm trying to test whether it's the canary in the coal mine on the downside or whether it's just unique in its own right with regard to its own offering as a suburb. And that's why I think it's great to be able to hear you talk not only to East Perth, but also to Perth, also to Wembley and Jolimont, because they're quite worlds apart from what you've just explained to me in terms of the outcomes you're getting.
So West Leederville is another area that's pretty special. It's got a little bit of community, but not as much as, let's say, Subiaco or Nedlands would.
It sits between two communities.
It does. Yeah. Kind of Subi, kind of West Perth, and also Leederville. So it's in between a lot. So if I went to West Leederville and we think back to 2018 when selling for a developer, Finbar, we were selling some remaining stock there in their Motive development next to WACA, next to the local government. It was $500,000, $550,000 two-bedroom apartments. Last week, we're selling them for $900,000. But West Leederville has gone through a really nice period of growth, probably from Spark. Let's be
Cambridge
honest.
Street, there's a little bit of a centre there now.
Absolutely. And you go a little bit further along, you've got Besk, you've got Highland, you've got
Butter.
other options. Yeah, absolutely. Butter, love it. Being from the Wembley for the last 12 years of my life, living in Wembley, we'd go to Wembley, maybe, but we'd end up in West Leederville usually. So West Leederville does have that attraction. It's also got the community centre. It's got a few other things happening. And people have literally said to us, what do you have in West Leederville? So it's not as often do we hear that for, let's say, Perth or East Perth. People who are seeking Perth and East Perth, they're just seeking Perth and East Perth.
Brendon, this is probably one of the most unique insights and honest insights I've received, I think, in a long time, talking to the realities of what's going on hyperlocal for you, but then being able to juxtapose that against the realities, which are actually pretty starkly different. And it just speaks to the noise, the craziness, the chaos right now in the world, not specifically our market, but I think is reflecting back onto our market. And that noise is obviously budget stuff. It's interest rates. It's war. It just feels like it's unrelenting. And I think our community is becoming somewhat desensitized to it in a way. It's nearly weird to not have some massive crisis going on in the news since COVID. It's just, there's always something. But certainly when it's hyper-focused on Australia or on our state, it certainly still has an effect. And I think that's probably what's coming out at the moment, modulating what is still an undersupplied market, is the noise is probably creating a short-time opportunity, I think, for people who are hyper-focused on what they want in their buying patterns. Is it East Perth? Is it Perth? Is it anywhere in WA, to be honest?
Well, I kind of put it to you that it's two parts of East Perth. You've got the Adelaide Terrace Road. I call that, not openly, but I would call that City East.
Yep.
And then the Royal Street part would be Claysbrook.
Yeah,
so even though
it needs to be renamed in that sense.
In a way, yeah. And then a lot of buyers see it like that too. So if you want to live a little bit more of a village lifestyle, you're going to be in Claysbrook. If you want to live more of a city fringe lifestyle or city centre lifestyle, you're going to be in East Perth heading towards St George's Terrace.
Well, you've got Joel Terrace as well, right?
There's
another part of East Perth that really shouldn't be called East Perth, in my opinion.
Even I've forgotten about it.
There you go.
To be frank. But I remember selling 6 townhouses in Joel Terrace back in 2012. Beautiful properties on that reserve, Banks Reserve. Stunning
Lovely
properties. There. Yeah, really nice.
But it's not East Perth.
Ah,
It should be essentially an extension of what you want to call it, Maylands, really. That whole peninsula should just be.
I think there's 3 councils there. I think it's literally 3 councils in that pocket. But, do you call it Maylands? Do you call it Mount Lawley? Do you still call it East Perth? And we're all waiting with bated breath to see what happens with the old grounds of the power station.
Yeah.
Let's keep that going.
I mean, that is one of Perth's biggest unrealised opportunities. When you go to Brisbane, you've been to Brisbane?
Absolutely.
The Wharf.
Oh, love it.
Underneath that bridge is one of the coolest precincts or nightlife that is in this country. That can be replicated at East Perth Power Station underneath our bridge to Optus. Golden Group right now building the biggest large format suburban development in the country across the river at Burswood Point. Imagine a lifestyle in 20 years where that's all built out, where the power station's just got bars all the way down a boardwalk.
Yeah.
You cross the river to get to Optus to watch the Dockers or the Eagles play. Yeah. That's the sort of stuff that changes a proposition for a house 100 metres behind it.
You're a visionary, absolutely. And I know the Burswood Point development quite intimately. I do sell for Golden Group.
Cool. How are they going?
Very good. 1-bedroom apartments, we're selling them for $900,000. We're selling 2-bedroom apartments anywhere from 1.4 to 2.1.
Is it just the glitz and glamour and the idea that you're selling right now? Because there's nothing on the ground. There's no community. There's no spark. There's no IGA. So you're selling the idea with some great 3Ds, obviously.
Yeah.
But, I mean, it's not like East Perth doesn't have similar views.
No, but the community at Burswood Point is being designed. So we're going to have the restaurant precinct. We're going to have the hotels. We're going to have a little bit of commercial.
So people are buying into the idea of something right now.
Yeah.
Whereas in East Perth, they're buying the reality of what is or isn't in their mind.
And when you look at the Burswood Point area, Burswood Point to me is such a nice spot. It's literally across the bay. It's across the bay from the power station. It's across from Claysbrook. And again, I did a presentation in Indonesia last year about the Burswood Point with Golden Group, and it was really, really good. It was called Golden Sedayu. We went out there and I was talking about how just across the water, there's the $25 million penthouse. Or we can sell you one here in Burswood Point for $6. And the people in the room were like, fantastic value. Isn't it amazing, the perspective? Whereas for your local WA person who might have grew up in a local East Vic Park, have a look at Burswood Point and say, wow, I've been looking at that there for the last 30 years and nothing's happened. Actually, a lot has happened. But again, to go and buy a riverfront home for $6.5 million, is that good value? Well, it depends on how you see it.
It depends on whether you're comparing it to Maylands.
Absolutely.
Right, or Joel Terrace. And I think that's proof is going to be in the pudding eventually when they do sell out and when they do resell sometime in the future, is does the market see this as just the other side of the Maylands, or do they see this as an Applecross, a South Perth outcome? And I think a lot of it will have to do with, as you said, the community that is or isn't created on those promenade streets. Yeah,
there'll be early childhood centres, there'll be a medical centre, like a dental practice.
Well, there needs to be. That thing is an enclave. And
absolutely.
Where Burswood got it wrong is it's got nothing. Right? The old Burswood development with Mirvac has nothing there. All you've got is the casino next door. There's really nothing servicing that little enclave between the casino and the stadium, right? Burswood Point's not going to make that mistake because I know how involved Andrew Sugia-Putra is on making sure this thing is world class.
He's a good man.
But that will be the outcome. If they don't deliver on all the local butcher, the local hairdresser, and that doesn't happen, then you'll just have another Burs outcome where you've got to drive all the way to Belmont just to get your local groceries. That can't be the reality.
No, and I don't think that's what they're aiming for either. So very, very good what they're doing is they're handpicking different traders, different brands to try to put in place. Luckily, they have time on their side too. And the good thing about what Golden Sadayu is doing down there is they've picked some very high-level Western suburb type builders to build these homes. So the spec and finish should be fantastic. And I don't know how many millions, I've heard Andrew say it, has been put into the ground just to make sure that the footings are great.
That's what I know. It's a lot of money.
Yeah. More money than we'll ever have.
Yeah, well, it's you know what? It needs to be the case because if you're going to be selling a world-class outcome, the money is required in the first place. And people will never appreciate it until one day the broader community is riding their bike around that peninsula for the first time in 80 years.
And it's cool to be on the ground level. Like when it's all happening, to see it being built, to see it being involved with the sales myself, I find it extremely exciting because I missed the East Perth development. I wasn't here back then. God, I was a wee fella, probably finishing school at that time. When I think about that, I would have loved to have nabbed myself a couple of blocks. You know?
I think there would have been great opportunity back then to get on that Riviera front in Claysbrook Cove back in the day. That itself has seen some insane growth, that little enclave there. So you're right, it could very much happen at Burswood Point as well.
Got one at the moment on Henry Lawson Walk, number 56. It's right near the turn as you're coming up towards the Chinese consulate. And you're literally looking at the people enjoying a drink at the Royal Bar. It's phenomenal. We're currently at about $3.4 million asking price. It hasn't ran out the door. We've had a bit of interest, but we're not quite there yet.
I think that's because it's an acquired taste, because it still suffers from not having that local village, local community, even though that's probably the best chance you're going to get in East Perth of experiencing that. Because the internal spec, as you said, probably doesn't reflect the external amenity in many cases of a lot of those townhouses. People walking through the door with that sort of money are probably looking to be wowed. And I think they're wowed as they walk in, and then often they go, if only this cabinetry wasn't 20 years old, things like that, because as you said, there hasn't been a whole bunch of upgrades to a lot of these apartments. But if you compare that price, 3.4, to what would have been spent in the first place, which would have been a few $100,000 when it was first developed, they're still doing all right.
And the design of it's not quite right for a family, and definitely not quite suited for a downsizer.
It's a lot of 3-4 story stuff in there, isn't it?
That would be 4 and a bit.
Yeah.
Yeah, with stairs.
So it's unique. It's a unique time in people's lives, I think, and certainly a unique family setup. Brendon, thanks so much for coming in.
It's a pleasure.
And we've sort of gone everywhere today across Perth, but so many insights that I haven't heard before. So thanks so much, Brendon Habak from Inhabit. Enjoy the rest of the year.
Anytime, mate. Thanks so much.
Thank you for listening to another episode of the Perth Property Show. If you've only just joined the conversation, you can catch up by heading over to our website, perthpropertyshow.com.au, subscribing to the podcast, or joining our Facebook page. Don't forget to tune in next Monday at 7 a.m. for more expert insights, local analysis, and suburb spotlights. Happy hunting!